Hi folks, my name is Emmanuel John. Welcome back to another installment of 12-Step Insights. Today we're going to be focusing on the fifth step. Before we do that, if you could take care of a little bit of business for me, there's a little button down here where you can subscribe to the channel so you can get the rest of the videos as they come out. You can also check the channel to see the previous videos. I have 2 books that are available for sale at addictioninthefamily.com as well as on Amazon. The first book is titled Addiction Why They Use. It's a handbook for anyone that loves an alcoholic or an addict, helps them learn how to deal with and understand what the addict alcoholic is going through. The second one is called Addiction Am I Powerless? And it's pretty much a comprehensive first step examination of powerlessness in a person who uses life, whether they're addict or not. It helps you look at where you could be in danger, where the problem is starting, could be getting worse. Just so that you can take a total self-assessment of this situation to see whether or not you need to stop or abstain from alcohol use either permanently or for at least a period of time, so that you can get sort of a grasp on how things are going with alcohol and drugs in your life. So without further ado, a little bit of business. Down here in this corner, if I haven't said it already, there's a little subscribe button. Make sure you click that. If you're seeing this on Facebook, please visit the YouTube page as well. Please like and share in this time of COVID. There's a lot of people who aren't able to get meetings and could use a little bit more insight than they're getting from just maybe a online meeting or something like that. So we'll just get right to it. The fifth step, admit it to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Now, a lot of people, when it comes to the fifth step, pretty much, as I suggested in the 4-step video, think that the 4th step is part A of the 5th step, and then part B of the 5th step is actually telling someone else. There are actually 3 aspects of the step that we need to consider that are very important. It doesn't just say tell another human being. It says admit it to God, to ourselves, and to another human being. So there's 3 aspects to the step, three ways that you're going to have, 3 things that you're going to have to do to complete it. The first thing is talking to God. Well, how do we talk to God? Most people do it in prayer. Some people do it in meditation. But talking to God is maybe sitting down and admitting in a prayer form, maybe on your knees at the end of the night or while you're working this step, to get down and maybe say some prayers or meditate and admit to your faults, the things you have done wrong, that they were wrong, that they weren't right, that it isn't the way you want to behave or it's not how you want to be perceived. So that's sort of the God part. Now, to yourself may seem like it would happen at the same time as God, but some people actually find a lot of benefit in just a non-God conversation where you're talking to yourself. Did I really do that? Was it right for me to do that? When I did that to him or her, did I do this when I took this or that? Was that right or was that wrong? And that's sort of keeping God out of the conversation. But it's before you meet with someone else. It's the intrapersonal communications that you have inside your head about the problem or the situation. So it's very important, it's very vital, because it helps be honest with the other 2 people, the other 2 aspects that you're going to work on, which is telling another human being and telling yourself. We're talking to ourselves, considerations are often had of how are we going to correct this thing, and how do we amend the process that we are going to be doing later in the 9th step. We do think about it now. It's probably an important time to think about it. We think about whether or not we should or shouldn't. We might not be ready to do it now. We might be more ready to do it later. In reference to another human being, when the step work was being done before they had the official outline of the steps, they were meeting with what they called a spiritual advisor, someone they trusted, another person, a friend, a person who could understand the things that they're talking about and maybe might not judge them. The sponsor thing obviously came much later. A lot of people don't know this, but originally the word sponsor came from the hospitals. It didn't even come from within the program. What was happening was alcoholics at the time were trying to get people admitted into hospitals to get care. And what would happen was they'd go in the hospital, these people would leave and go get drunk that day. So the people in the hospital were like, well, we're not going to give this person care if they're not going to be able to come here and pay for it or even get well as a result of it. So what they started doing was they said, okay, we'll take him into the hospital, but we're going to need you to come in and visit him. You are going to sponsor his placement in the hospital. That meant that they were going to come and visit the person every day that they were in the hospital, as well as be there the day they were released from the hospital and taken home, if they had a home even. So it was a comprehensive way to say, we'll get you treatment, we'll give him treatment, but you're going to have to do some work too. So once we understand the three aspects, the God, to ourselves, and to another human being, the next thing we have to consider is what we are talking to these people about. It says the exact nature of our wrongs. That can get a little confusing. It doesn't say all of the details and all the little things, who did what to who and when and how much you took and all that kind of thing. That's pretty much four-step stuff. It's about the nature of the wrong. Why did I do the things that I did? So some of the things that people do, some of the nature of some of our wrongs, is fear, lust, selfishness, pride, ego, fear. I took it because I wanted it. I didn't ask for something that I took because I was prideful. So the nature, we're looking at the core of what it is. That's what we are going to find out to ourselves, admit to ourselves. To a lot of people, it's fear. Fear of being judged, or fear of being ridiculed, or fear of being abandoned. So there's a lot of different aspects, but the nature of the wrong, when I would work with people doing a fifth step, what I would usually suggest to them is I'd repeat over and over to them, is what's the exact nature of your wrong? What was the nature of your wrong? Why did you do what you did? That's what you need to figure out. That's what the fifth step is about. And you're going to use yourself, your own intellect. You're going to use God, prayer meditation format of honesty. And then you're going to use another person, hopefully one with some experience at doing that themselves. Introspection. It's one of the aspects of the Oxford groups that they looked at. Self-appraisal, self-assessment. It isn't about self-appraisal, self-assessment, and admission, but just having that process of knowing who I am, why I did what I did, and how I did what. A lot of what the using person did was with a clouded mind. It wasn't them, as I talk about in the books. It wasn't me. It was a me altered. It wasn't my son Joe. It was Joe altered. Once the drugs take over, Joe's not Joe anymore. I'm not me anymore. Okay? Sometimes anger can do the same thing as the drug. When I'm fearful, I'm not being me. I'm being me afraid. So me altered by the fear, which, as most of us know, is a chemical reaction in the brain related to fight or flight. The fifth step is often a release of some pretty toxic fears. There's an old saying, we're only as sick as our darkest secret. And secrets can keep us sick. And sometimes those secrets get a lot bigger and seem to mean a lot more when they're kept in the dark. And sometimes the simple admission of them, I fooled around on my husband, I fooled around on my wife. It seems so big when it's on the inside and nobody knows except the person that they did it with. And then all of a sudden here's another person that knows. And that person says, it's called universality. Other people go through the same things we do. And they say, well, I did it too. Or I had that happen to me and this is how I felt. It helps that person understand how their partner might have felt. So getting back to the release of toxic fears. This stuff, once it comes out, for some people, it's like a big weight coming off their shoulders, or like a big sack on their back being released and just hit. You can almost hear it hit the ground. So one of the things, as I just mentioned, that we are doing with the other individual is getting another human's insight into possibly a dark secret, into the nature. Maybe they figured out already why they did a similar thing. Why did they fool around on their wife or their husband? Because they weren't happy in the relationship and they probably should have had enough courage to end it a lot sooner than they did. Maybe they used excuses like we stayed in it for the kids, things like that. So there's a lot of different aspects that you can work out with another human being. When it comes to admitting to yourself, sometimes it's about figuring out, what should I do about this thing? I stole something, I took something. Well, I know that person's dead. Is there anything I can do now about what I did? Can I give money to charity in place of giving it back to the person I took it from? Figuring out to yourself how you're going to adjust to this awareness, this reality. It takes time, and it helps, again, to have other people around you who've been through it too. They might have some very helpful hints. Obviously, the 12-step programs are full of them. You can rarely go to any kind of a step meeting in AA, Al-Anon, Nar-Anon, any of them, without getting some kind of an insight that you hadn't thought of before in order to work at the step and to do the step. So, and it's good to have someone to talk these things over with, because a lot of times when people do this step, they talk with another human being and they realize that maybe they shouldn't make a particular amends. Maybe it would be me being selfish to go apologize to an old partner, girlfriend or something that I was with, that I fooled around on her back 10 years ago when we were together. That all that does is hurt her. She's done moved on with her life, or he's done moved on with his life. So you figure out with another person whether or not something should or shouldn't be done before you go ahead and do it, because there's a lot of space between step 5 and step 9. And a lot of people try to work on their 9-step stuff when they're not even on their 9-step yet. Okay? I once had a guy I was working with who was sponsoring a guy who was in California, and the individual had been sober about 10 or 14 years, was married, had a couple kids, like 7 and 9, had a good life in recovery and was doing well. And he had done an armed robbery years earlier, before he had ever met his wife, and he wanted to make amends for it. And he went to the store to make amends, and he had the $400 or whatever it was that he robbed from the store. And the guy who ran the store, a Korean gentleman, pulled a gun on him and held him there until the cops came, and then reported him for having done that robbery. And the statute of limitations didn't exist on that at that particular time because it was with a handgun that he did the robbery. So he ended up going to jail. And he thought, well, that's my payment, sure. But his wife and his kids, who were dependent on him for their support, were left without their support. So it's good to know when we should and shouldn't do something, and if we should or just to have that conversation soon. And sometimes another person can help us with that. When it comes to admitting it to God, we might also be trying to figure out what we can do about it. Maybe sometimes we just need strength to even accept that we were that kind of a jerk or that kind of a person who would do a thing like that. So that's sort of that conversation, that admission to God about the nature. God, this isn't my nature, but this is how I did and why I did, and I don't want to do it anymore. Personally, from a psychotherapeutic perspective, it's probably more important that we have that conversation with God than even another human being. That we're coming to grips for ourselves with the things we've done and the mistakes. And if they were mistakes, they're mistakes. It wasn't done on purpose, or it wasn't done intentionally. If it was done intentionally, then that's another nature, that I did it. I was angry at the world, and so I took it out on other people. I beat people up, or I stole, or I damaged property because I was angry. The nature of the wrong is the anger, and getting the anger taken care of is really not about fixing a fence that you broke, or a mailbox that you beat up, or, God, by today's standard, a statue that you pulled down. So finding out why you did it and understanding why you did it was probably more important than the actual act itself, at least in regards to the fifth step and that relationship that people in recovery are trying to have with a power greater than themselves. Again, like in the fourth, these are things that we want to clear out of the way. Because if I think I'm a jerk and I think I'm a thief, I'm probably not going to talk to God too often, because I'm just a thief and I'm just a jerk. If I can work out my thieving and ignorance with a higher power, and me and my higher power move past it, then I'm able to actually move forward with a freer life, freedom from the bondage of the old self, not just the current self. Perhaps we're going to pray for a method to figure out how to do that thing, how to make that amends, and how to help that person. Again, remember, when we talked about the structure of the steps, the first step is the problem. We're addicted, we're powerless over a chemical, our lives are unmanageable. The second step is the solution, that a power greater than yourself, whatever that power might be, could help you get to sanity. Well, the fifth step is about finding that sanity. 3 through 11, if you work 3 through 11, you get 12, which is a spiritual awakening. And the spiritual awakenings often begin to happen in the fourth and fifth step area, 6th and 7th step areas, which we'll talk about the 6th later. So working that through this process is about a total feeling of mental health, a place where we can get to a space where we are comfortable with ourselves and comfortable in our own skin. That's what this is about. I knew a gentleman one time, and he used to say that the recovery programs owed him a lot of money because he was always looking down at the ground all the time, and he would find money all the time. But after he got well and worked the steps, he was able to look people in the eyes, and he'd walk down the street looking around instead of looking down at the ground all the time when he walked. And he said that once he started looking people in the eye, he stopped finding money on the ground. So he used to say that the program owed him a lot of money. I think the idea of being able to look people in the eye is a pretty valuable asset. And if the fifth step helps us get that, then that's really important. I think being loved through our problems when we're talking about them with another human being is really important. You know, it's important to have that sponsor or spiritual guide or someone, even a close friend in recovery, that we do the step with. Some people do it with their partners. To have that person that knows us, truly knows us. So then when we have some other predicament or dilemma or even cravings, we can go to that person and they know us and they know the nature and they can remind us of those things that maybe we're forgetting in a time of struggle or trouble. So I hope this stuff helps. There's obviously tons and tons more that could be discussed on these steps. Maybe we'll do some more on specific issues in the future after I'm done the 12 steps insight stuff. So please like, share, comment in the comment section. Please, I'd love to hear any questions that you have. If you want a video done on a particular topic or subject, I'd love to do it. If you check out the channel, there's a lot of other questions that people have asked over time. If you respond or comment, I should find them. You can also visit the Facebook pages. There's one for Addiction Why They Use, which is a broader for the families and using people. And then there's Addiction Am I Powerless, both on Facebook. So you can check those out, and you can also find me with links to this page to the YouTube channel. So thanks. Have a good day. Take care of yourself. Don't be afraid. There is a better you on the other side. Maybe it's the real you. Maybe it's a you never developed. This process with the fifth step is going to help you develop that person that you want to be, that person that people want to be around, that will want you around. It's something that shouldn't be missed. So again, check out the books if you like. Please like the page, subscribe down here, and I'll be providing some more information on the other steps coming up in future weeks. Thanks a lot. Take care of yourself.